This season on Top Chef.
20 seasons in terms of the sophistication of the cooking, the actual workmanship.
Get those knives ready, Pop.
The creativity, the competition just got really, really serious.
16 Top Chef winners and finalists representing 11 different Top Chef competitions around the world have come to London to compete in the ultimate culinary showdown.
I won Top Chef Poland.
Finalist, Top Chef Germany.
I won Top Chef Mexico.
He's sprinting over there.
Wouldn't you be?
The judges are pushing us far from our comfort zone.
World All-Stars, you should be able to do everything.
I gotta fight to make my dream come true.
The skills. They call it Top Chef World All-Star for a reason.
Welcome to the Eat Your Content podcast. Thank you for listening and choosing this pod. You have many pods to choose from, but you chose this one, and I appreciate you for listening. So this week, and hopefully for the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about Top Chef, and we're going to be doing season episode recaps. I'm going to call them semi-instantaneous reactions to the podcast as we have day jobs, and we'll get the pods out as we can get them out. So I appreciate everyone hitting that like and follow and subscribe button just to be notified of any new episodes that drop. So I have a special guest with me. I want to thank him for his time. He is the chef owner of Silky's Chicken and Champagne Bar in Jacksonville, Florida. Recently named one of the top 10 bars and restaurants in the U.S. by the Champagne Bureau, and the only one in the southeastern United States being represented, I believe. He also has a line of spices that is on Oprah's list of favorite things. And he has a new cookbook coming out called Southern Cooking and Global Flavors. It's going to be available everywhere April 11th. And more importantly, and the reason why he's on today, is he is a Top Chef alum from season 7. Please welcome Chef Kenny Gilbert. Kenny, thank you for coming in.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, thanks. So first things first, how's Oprah? How's she doing? We're close. We're close. We talk, we follow each other. No, I'm just kidding. We don't follow each other. And you had a busy couple of weeks. You were at Miami for the South Beach Food and Wine Festival, and you were at TPC Week at Ponte Vedra. So you've been going nonstop. You've been hustling for a bit.
Yeah, I've been on a grind. I took on a position as VP of culinary for a big restaurant group in Miami. So yes, the South Beach Food and Wine Festival is obviously a big project. As you're running 13 restaurants, it's a lot going on. Yeah.
It looks like you had fun. I was keeping up on Instagram and saw a lot of the videos and the pictures you were putting up, and it looks like you were having a good time with you and your team. And how was TPC week?
TPC was great. It just ended. Crazy week. The good thing is that this year didn't really have any rain. There was a little bit of rain on Friday, but it was a great turnout. A lot of great support coming out to check us out on the course. I worked at commissary, so I was doing all the production. So although people didn't necessarily see me all week, they saw me on Sunday. I was prepping the chicken, cooking the biscuits, making the sauces, and having the team come do the shopping in the morning to drop it off. And yes, it was crazy. A lot of cooking.
Yeah, it looked like it. And one of your Instagram videos, you were kind of showing where you were going to be cooking, and I was looking at it, I was like, oh, this looks like one of those kind of tents that you would find on Top Chef. So it was kind of like cooking in small, tight spaces. So I was like, oh, how apropos.
Yes.
So awesome. All right, so let's talk Top Chef, right? So you were on Top Chef season 7 back in what seems like eons ago, 2010. So for those listening, spoiler warning, if you want to avoid any spoilers for multiple seasons of Top Chef, including anywhere between seasons 1 and 19, then you better pack your knives and go, because we're going to be talking a lot about Top Chef and past seasons and how they compare to now and that sort of thing. So
Please pack your knives and go.
Let's see. So let's run down Top Chef, just kind of a quick, very historical rundown. So Top Chef premiered in 2006. There's been 29 international versions. There's been over 100 winners. And the special thing about Top Chef season 20 is it's filmed in London. First time that Top Chef's ever filmed internationally for the entire season. The finale is going to be filmed in Paris. And let's talk about Top Chef's kind of impact on pop culture, right? So it's won it's been nominated for 42 Emmys. It's won twice. They go to different cities every year. Tom Colicchio, one of the hosts, even says it's the show the industry takes most seriously? There's a lot of cooking shows out today, but it's the one that professional chefs look at and go, this is the real deal. What's your thoughts on that comment from Tom Colicchio?
I think it's very accurate. I mean, they do a great job of interviewing chefs, and the process of interviewing the chefs to come onto the show. You not only have to have a certain level of chops, and experience to be credible to be on the show. You have to have the personality, the look, the voice. You have to be a combination of different things. So the interview process takes about 6 months just to get through it. Once you're kind of even selected to even be in the talks. So it's a great show. I mean, I started watching it back in the first season. I've done events with a lot of the different chefs around the throughout the different seasons through the course of my years. And these chefs are they work hard. They're very skilled, and they're the best of the best.
Yeah. And not only is it kind of respected among chefs in the professional realm, but it's also trained a lot of viewers and consumers on fine dining and eating. And, there was a time where I would have sat down and ate food and not realized, oh, wait, this needs acidity. I would always know it needs something, like I know it's missing something, but I could never put my finger on it. And, it's trained people on, when a sauce is over reduced or when a short rib hasn't been braised enough. So it's raised expectations of diners. Have you kind of seen that since your time being on the show?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the good thing is that based on the episode or the theme of the show, they bring in specialists, right? So, you're going to bring in a chef that's, if it's a seafood challenge, they have Eric Herrera there. He's like the best of the best in terms of cooking seafood. So his perspective and his view when he does it all the time is going to be highly credible. So when you hear their comment about something, it could have been cooked a little bit more or whatever, it is an opinion, because sometimes they don't always have the diversity and ethnicity of the style or the culture. They may not be as privy to that.
Right.
So sometimes that's a learning curve for them. But in terms of seasoning, how well was it cooked? Was it balanced? They usually have pretty credible chefs on there, and you learn a lot from that.
Yeah, I mean, Top Chef is not just entertaining; it's also educational. I've learned a lot just watching the show over the seasons, and the effect of Top Chef on the cities that they choose. So a couple of instances, Charleston was picked in 2016 for season 14, and then right after that, they were named best cities for food in the U.S. I think by Travel and Leisure, one of those travel magazines.
Yeah.
Seattle in 2012, they saw a bump in full-time restaurant employment by 6%. A lot of them naming Top Chef is why they wanted to come. And then also just the chefs that appear on the show themselves. There's an Eater article in 2022 that a lot of chefs from that show have become household names, yourself included in that. And many have parlayed that not just in opening restaurants, but in multiple TV appearances, having their own show, brand collaborations, and free-floating, storytellers, so to speak. So how has your career been affected since your appearance on Top Chef season 10, both in the immediate, right there, 2010, 2011, but since then in the long term?
It's been great. I mean, I was running, 5-star restaurants and hotels my entire career. So when I went on there, I was 36 years old. I, had been doing that since I was 23. So I was 13 years working at a very, very high level already. So in the market with other chefs, because like when you're looking at reviewing whether it's a Michelin star restaurants or AAA 5-diamond 5-star restaurants, once when you're in it, and so you're constantly looking out there to see who's out there. But the show really helped bring it to the forefront. When all of a sudden you're like, oh man, this person, oh man, yeah, they worked at Le Bernardin, or this person worked at L'Espionage. You're like, wow, this is great. You realize that the people that you're watching are highly skilled. So for me, it was great to get the exposure and the credibility of what it was already had been in place. It was just kind of like amplified and justified by being on the show somewhat, because it's not like you're cooking in your kitchen and you have all your conditions perfect for what you're used to doing.
Right.
You are in a reality TV show. They throw in, you know, stumps here and there, things behind the scenes, which we'll talk about, that a lot of times from the viewer, I wish they would actually put up the rules so that all the chefs have to sign off on, because then you would really understand the challenges they have. Because from your perspective, you see one angle, but there's another angle when you're in it.
Right. So speaking of reality TV, in watching Top Chef for myself from seasons 1 through now, there's this distinct break point between seasons 10 and season 11. I think from seasons 1 through 10, you know, that was the kind of the early days of reality TV, right, with Survivor and some of those shows. And I think a lot of what Bravo did was kind of play to those tropes. Like you had the villain, the underdog, the plucky underdog, that kind of thing. And so, like, for instance, in season 2, Cliff Crooks will forever be known as the only guy that got kicked off of Top Chef for holding down Marcel and trying to shave his head, right? There was a lot of focus on that type of drama, that raw human drama in the house, and then there's Ed's missing pea puree from your season, which there are still dark corners of the internet that have conspiracy theories of where that pea puree went, and nobody knows to this day what happened to Ed's pea puree. So there was a lot of those typical reality show tropes. And in season 11, it took a turn, right? I think it started focusing more on the food and the technique. For sure, the culture in the cities that they were in, and the culture of the foods that they were cooking, and there was a lot more camaraderie between the chefs now, instead of who's sabotaging who. And there's just a much more, almost like a Great British Bake Off kind of type thing, where the contestants were really building each other up and helping each other out. So a couple of good examples of that was in season 18. If you remember, Jamie Tran was at judges table, and she was willing to walk out because she didn't feel like she belonged there. You saw imposter syndrome happening in real time. And thinking about that now, I'm I get a little emotional watching it and going, man, this is somebody that literally has nothing to prove and is on the show because of how good she is, and she's doubting herself. Like, you wouldn't have seen that in seasons 1 through 10. You would have seen somebody throwing somebody under the bus at judges table, right? And then Buddha Lowe in season 19, who's in season 20 now, he grew up in a restaurant family. He was a super fan. He was raised on it. So now you have a new generation of chefs coming in that have grown up watching the show and have steered their career towards being on this show, which I think is interesting. Have you kind of noticed that in the later seasons too?
Yeah, I always end up binge watching the seasons because of my schedule and whatnot. And so you're right, that transition from one season to the next, you definitely saw a turn. I mean, also with Last Chance Kitchen, when they added Last Chance Kitchen, that was a pivotal point, because it's like, wait a minute, I think that started at season 8. It's like my season was season 7, it started season 8. Now it's like, oh, wait a minute, they got another chance? Like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, this is wild, but they're smart, right? I mean, they're looking at how to keep the guests, the customer, the viewer engaged in what's going on. And so it makes sense. Like anything else, it has to evolve. But it's exciting to see their growth. Because it's still entertaining. You learn a lot while you're on the show, and for me, from a chef's perspective, it's great to see how the chefs are bringing their skill set from their region into the show, and then how they're adapting it to the challenges they're being presented with. Because not everyone is going to take some of those risks, and behind the scenes, you don't necessarily know, like, oh, this museum you're going to, you might not be able to have open fire, or you have to, this thing has to be cooked off hours in advance because you have to transport from one location to another. There's a lot of different variables in there that make up. Now it's still the same even playing field, so it's whoever just thinks it through better, and it puts out the best dish, the best bite. Period. But the psyche of it is what's crazy.
Yeah, until these later seasons, you really see the chefs kind of battling themselves, and it's really interesting to watch. And it's for me, the later seasons are much better than the earlier seasons. present company excluded, of course. But
Mhm.
season 18 was one of my favorite seasons. So let's run down the chefs you brought talked about earlier, bringing kind of their own thing to the table. I mean, you can't get much more diverse than this. We have 11 countries represented. We have France, we got Brazil, we got 4 from the U.S., we got 2 from Middle East, North Africa Top Chef winners. You have 1 from Germany, you have 2 from Canada, you have Italy, Thailand, Spain, Mexico, and Poland. This is just an incredible list of chefs, and it's.
Yeah.
I watched the first episode a couple of times, obviously to take notes and everything, and each time I watch it, I was catching something different. So let's break down the episode. So we have a quickfire challenge. So if you're unfamiliar with the show, there's 2 challenges. There's a quickfire challenge, and then there's the elimination challenge. So the quickfire is a very short, just like it sounds, quickfire, just a really short challenge that kind of ranks everybody. You kind of see where everybody is and their skill and what they're bringing to the table. And sometimes the winner of the quickfire is given immunity. Sometimes they're given some other prize. Maybe it's just bragging rights, but it really kind of sets the stage for everybody. So this quickfire challenge, you had 3 minutes initially to raid the pantry for 5 ingredients. There were no proteins. And then they teamed up with another chef and combined their 5 ingredients each, and then chose a fish that were native to the waters of the United Kingdom. And then they have 30 minutes to cook a dish together. So when you saw this, your quick fire challenge was a mise en place challenge, and then you had to cook something after you prepared stuff. So which quick fire challenge did you prefer? Did you like your challenge in season 7, or were you like, oh man, what I could have done with these ingredients in this particular quickfire challenge? Which one would you have rather have done?
I had a lot of respect for my quickfire challenge, just because you're showing off. It's a skills challenge, right? It's like, how fast can you, small dice these onions or brunoise? How fast can you peel these potatoes? How fast can you break down a chicken? And then what can you do with all those ingredients? And it kind of tapers off, and you kind of see who the top 4 are to compete. This other challenge is great because they are in London. They're going to be cooking with some amazing ingredients from around the world. But for me, when you team up with another person, there's always that variable. Like, you don't know this person yet. You have to, you may have heard of them. I mean, a lot of people from around the world, like, you don't necessarily know, like, everything that's going on in North Africa, or whatever. You don't know who's there, who the players are. So you're trying to figure things out. So I think I would have preferred my challenge from a starting one. I think the skills challenges are always great. I think they're always. I think this first challenge would probably have been better served for another episode, just because of, I don't know. I think it'd be good to see, like, hey, how these, where are truly the skills of these chefs? Like, where do we see it lie?
And what a tough first challenge, right? You're teaming up with essentially a stranger, and luckily everybody was able to speak the same language and communicate with each other. And because that could have been awkward if you had somebody there that you didn't speak the same language, and now you're trying to communicate. So yeah, I think I agree with you. Like, with the mise en place challenge, if you lose, you only have yourself to blame, right? But with this one, you have a stranger that you never cooked with before. So that was a really good one. And so the chef from France, he had a line in there that was really funny. Oh, and France, this 30 minutes is such a challenge. In France, our quickfires are a leisurely hour and a half. I'm like,
I was like, yo, I said, what? He was like, oh, the minimum time was like an hour and a half. I was like, what? An hour and a half? I mean, I could prep almost a whole kitchen, a restaurant in an hour and a half. Like, that was crazy. I was like, well, to each his own.
That's how they do it in Europe, right? Just kind of laid back, taking your time. And in America, it's like go. I thought that was funny, and just listening to, like, oh man, 30 minutes. What am I gonna do? And then this one blew my mind, right? The team that was Vittorio Gallubi from Italy and the chef from Canada, the Italian chef said, you know what, I'm going to try to make risotto in under 30 minutes. And I'm like, look, I'm no Top Chef. I know it's at least 40 minutes to make a good risotto, right? And even the chef from Canada's like, That's a death sentence. There is no way that's going to happen. But they're insistent. When you saw that, how much were you shouting at your TV, going, "Don't do that! Don't do that!"
Well, I think So what was the time limit on this one? It was like
30 minutes. It was 30 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So if she would have started it right from the rip, like that means the only
From
thing
the
she was
word go.
doing, let go, is like, hey, let me go ahead and get my oil in there. Let me add my shallots, my garlic, whatever. Let me get that translucent with the rice. Let me start adding hot stock, and then just start going. She would have had to been continuously doing that, pretty quickly in order for that to work. I don't, but she didn't. I think she had like 10 minutes left,
right?
And then she started like, "Yo, like, there's no way that's gonna be ready. No way."
Yeah, with risotto, you can even look at it and see that it's not done. And when they presented the pictures, pretty as it was, I was like, yeah, that's gonna be some crunchy risotto.
Well, at the time when he took a bite, he tried to, like, he was breaking the rice between his teeth. He was just like.
Yeah.
He just kind of looked around. I was like, yo.
Oh, yeah. Tom Clicchio was funny. He's like, did this just happen? Like, what are we doing? Like, you're a Top Chef winner from Italy. How do you not know that risotto is going to take longer than the time you gave it? So that was, I'm like, what are you thinking? Now, here's what blew my mind. So Spain, Begonia Rodrigo, she's already a Michelin star chef in Spain. Literally has nothing to prove, and crazy. So you can see the impact we were talking earlier about Top Chef's impact on pop culture. She's coming on this show because she knows what the show can do for a chef in becoming a name brand, right? She doesn't have to be on the show. She has Michelin stars under her belt. So it's amazing the caliber of chefs that Top Chef is able to attract, right?
Well, you got to realize also is that where we are in the world, after COVID, a lot of places maybe haven't totally recovered back.
That's
if you ever
true.
go on the show, like Kevin Gillespie, he'll tell a story like, at Woodfire Grill back in the day, like they were like almost about to close. He went on and basically rocked it out, and then all of a sudden his restaurant's been sold out like ever since. Like he's never not been sold out ever. But initially, and he'll tell the story, like it's scary. And nowadays, like, if people aren't traveling, depending on what part of the world they're in, this would be a great bump. Not to mention it's $250,000. That's a lot of money to be able to go back and help your restaurant and take it to the next level. And she may be looking like, hey, yo, like I'm already 2 stars. I want to go for a 3rd, but I know that I need to make this investment. And I know this is going to help bring more people. Regardless, there are going to be flooding a restaurant just because she's on the show. And so everyone has a different reason behind doing it, but and everyone has a different challenge.
Sure.
No one is coming in there saying, hey, you know what? I have the perfect ideal situation, and I'm just making tons of money, opening a bunch of restaurants, and I'm just going to decide to go on and put it on TV. Someone on there is like, hey, I want to do something. I want to get my name out there. I want to open my own place. There's a million different things for sure.
Yep. And we're going to talk about her in the elimination challenge, because I thought her elimination challenge dish was just, from the looks of it, was amazing. So we'll talk about that later. So Buddha Low, which was one of my favorites from season 19, he made butter from scratch from cream in a quickfire challenge. That's pretty ballsy for a quickfire challenge. What did you think of that move?
It's not hard. It takes like you just over whip cream. You can. My brother made his own butter for a whole hotel like for years. Like it's literally just taking cream, over whipping it, and then all of a sudden the milk fat solid is formed, and then boom, it's done. It takes like a minute or 2. Now to do that and then to cook with it was very smart, because he was thinking, he already knew that it doesn't take that long to do it. He knew that he wanted to have some ingredients to show some diversity. So depending on what the next part of that challenge was, or the twist, that he was going to be able to make an adjustment. And so he was very, very, he's very, very smart in terms of culinarily, understanding the ingredients he's working with.
Yeah, when they were doing his interview piece too, he had that state of mind going in. He's like, I'm picking ingredients that are that I can use a bunch of different ways, because he knows Top Chef. He knows they're going to throw something weird at him.
That's
So
right.
I thought that
That's
was
right.
really smart, a smart move on his part, that he could do something with it as cream, and if that didn't work out, he could do something with it and turn it into butter in a little bit of time.
Right.
And then the quickfire winners were actually Sarah and Dale. They made langoustine with seafood broth and gremolata. That dish looked fantastic. They won, and that was the one I wanted to try the most. Like I'm looking at it, and I said, "Oh God, that looks so good." So Sarah and Dale, they win the quickfire challenge. They win immunity. How important is it not just to win immunity, but to win that very first quickfire challenge? So when you were on your show, you made it through the 3 rounds of the mise en place, and then you got to the cook part, right, where you were cooking the last 3.
It was between me and Angelo.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
Angelo ended up winning it. But
Yep.
what you didn't see was Tom, after that announcement, he says, Kenny, he says, you would have won had your sauce not developed this skin, because I had to like this onion potato puree, that was the sauce. And I said, well, chef, we're sitting on a rooftop and baking in the sun. We're not allowed, we didn't have any closures. We couldn't sauce, a la minute. It's like, he goes, well, that's a part of the game. You got to figure it out. And so,
wow.
And so then from there, moving forward, you'll notice throughout the different, challenges in our season, we would always ask the questions, hey, can we sauce on the side? Can we do this and that? Can we sauce in front of the judges? There's a lot of things that you don't know. Like when they tell you like hands up, like prior to what you can and can't do. If you ask the questions and they say yes, because everyone votes and they agree, then you can go and then you can have an advantage, or you can be able to complete your dish the way that you really wanted to.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Some behind the scenes stuff. So when you're on your show and then looking at this one, how important is it to win that very first quickfire?
It's important. I mean, you want to be able to show your presence. You want to be able to show that, hey, you know what, I'm a force to be reckoned with. And you start a good pace. I mean, even when you're in the top 3, that, hey, you know what, this I'm in the hunt. Like they're liking my flavors. What I presented is a good your mind, you're like, man, they're enjoying what I put out. So at least having an idea of what they're liking so far.
Yeah. And it also kind of sets you apart right there early on, that you're going to be the guy to beat or the person to beat, right? So and they win they won the quickfire challenge. That gives them immunity in the elimination challenge. Let's move to the elimination challenge. And for elimination challenge, it was deceptively difficult. It sounded easy, but then the more you thought about it, it got a little more complicated, right? So the elimination challenge was to create a vegetable forward dish, not a vegan dish, but a vegetable forward dish where the protein is used more like a seasoning or an accent and not the main thing. So when you heard those rules, did you feel that it was like, oh, this is easy, and then you kind of started thinking about what you would cook? Was this in your mind? Was this a good first elimination challenge?
Yeah, I think it's very accurate to how a lot of chefs are cooking nowadays anyway, because the cost of things are going up so much that your produce is generally going to be a lower cost item unless you're doing very, very high end items like morels and truffles and things like that. But when you can, if you can take a beautiful heirloom baby carrot or just some baby carrots in general and roast them and develop flavors utilizing the carrot tops and cooking it different ways, making a puree, charring, making a soil. There's a lot of different things, and then to add a little bit of fat in there or some kind of animal protein, whether you add in duck fat because you confine one part of it, or you're making a dressing with that fat, or you're taking bacon and wrapping, something whole in it. That's a lot of chefs are cooking that way nowadays, because a lot of people want to eat that way too.
Yeah, that's what Tom was saying on the Tom, like we're first name basis. That's what Tom Colicchio was saying on the show. Is that exactly what you're saying? A lot of chefs are moving towards vegetable forward dishes. So, so they go to Whole Foods, and this is kind of a thing that they do in every episode. So before the Elimination Challenge, they go to Whole Foods to go on a shopping trip. In this case, they were given 250 British pounds, which is about 300 in US dollars. I've shopped at Whole Foods before. Ain't no way I'm shopping for 8 people on $300 at Whole Foods. So what aren't they showing in terms of this budget that you're, because you had to do it too. So how do you make that stretch at a place like Whole Foods?
So a lot of times they're going to have common pantry items in a particular location, and you're going to see that list. You're going to see, so like when you go in, you already know that even when you're off, it always changes. Like when you're in the official Top Chef kitchen, which I don't think they even, wherever they decide they're going to have that one at, you already know what dairy you have. You already know what dry goods you have. You know what hydrocolloids you have. Like, hey, they got liquid nitrogen over here. This is the equipment. You already know this is standard. This is what I got. So when you go shopping, you only have to get the core items. So like you might not have to buy tomatoes because they already have enough tomato product in the kitchen already.
Okay.
And that way you may say, okay, cool, I just need to buy my protein. I'm only going to be looking at 4 ounces or 3 ounces per person. So you do your math and you say, okay, well, I only need, I could like 5 pounds max or whatever, or 3 pounds. And then you already know how you're going to break that down. Or how you're going to utilize the whole, like say it's a whole lobster. You don't need a lot of protein because it's a vegetable forward dish, right? So you're going to buy your veggies and then you're going to buy the protein as secondary. So that's why that budget wasn't super high, because it's not like you're going in and buying, for 500 people, you're cooking like, it's a pork belly challenge. You got to buy all this pork belly. It made sense for what it is. So as a chef, you have to also know the numbers, right? You got to be able to walk in there and say, hey, what can I do? Like, I can't just buy like a ton of product and it'd be wasteful. No, you only have, if it says $250 or 250 pounds, that's exactly what it is. Not a penny more. They'll make you up, take it off, up, you overspent, you know? So.
Because there are some seasons I'm watching and they'll go to the meat counter and they're like, how much short rib do you have? Oh, 10 pounds. I'll take it all. I'm like, there ain't no way you're getting $300 worth of short rib in one trip and then trying to buy some other stuff. So, so that makes sense. They have the kind of the core pantry items. So you're not having to get salt and pepper and stuff like that.
Not all the time. There's times also they'll say, listen, the only thing you're allowed to use are the dry ingredients, or the only thing you're allowed to use is the dairy. They will give you some twists in there and say, you can't, you got the whole use of the Top Chef pantry, great. Or they'll say the only thing you can use is what's in these 2 refrigerators.
Gotcha.
And then you got to run and then see whatever is left.
So shopping at Whole Foods is chaotic as it looks on TV. I mean, it doesn't look like they shut the place down just for you guys. Like it's a normal Tuesday for everybody else, and they're out grocery shopping, and then there's 16 chefs running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Is it just like that? Does it look like that? Feel like that?
Yeah. So what they do is they make sure, obviously they go in there and stage it and make sure that obviously the Whole Foods knows what's going on. The camera crews kind of already know where they're going to be kind of positioned. They kind of walk it, but the chefs have no idea. They have you in a holding area and they'll say, okay, action chefs. Then you see everyone running there with their cart or their basket. And then they haven't been in that store yet. So they don't know where anything is at. It's a different one, because everyone's set up a little bit differently. They're kind of the same, but a little bit different. So until you go into that store, you have no idea what's going on. When you finally get in there, it's frantic. You're trying to say, okay, where's the protein counter? Where's this counter? And so it is kind of crazy.
I can't imagine being like a single mom going shopping at Whole Foods or something, like all these people running around and like, what is happening right now? That's funny. So let's get to some of the scenes that they were in the kitchen. So they go to this looks like a terraria, like a large greenhouse, and it looks really, really nice in there, except for the tent that they were having to cook in. It looked like it was a dollar store version of the Great British Bake Off. I was like, oh my Lord, that is awful looking. But Dawn Burrell, like watching her cook and shop stresses me out so much. Like in her season 18, like time was a huge issue for her. Like she had some time management issues in her original season, and then it kind of came back to haunt her in this season. But she's an awesome chef, but she has no idea what she's cooking. She's in the store. Like you go in, I'm sure when you were on the show, you had some idea of what you were wanting to do, keeping in mind that there are going to be some twists, but you have at least a general idea. Dawn was like, I don't know, I'm just going to grab this and this and this, and we're just going to see what happens. It's like Michael Jordan going up for a slam dunk and not deciding what he's going to do until he's halfway in the air. And I was like stressing out. So when you saw that, were you kind of like, wow, that's one way to do it.
Yeah. Everyone has their way that they organize themselves, and you see, you see the weaknesses and the strengths of the chefs when they go in. Those are that's as real can get. You should go into it at least with an idea of having at least 2 or 3 different dishes in your head, and then when you go in there, you look for the ingredients, and then some things you have to shift on. Like you might say, well, I definitely want to do asparagus. It's a seasonal thing. I want to do asparagus right now, and then everyone else, they're chefs. They're thinking about the time of the year too. So next thing you know, everyone's grabbing asparagus. You're like, shit. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and change to something else.
Yeah.
Because they bought all the asparagus that was there. You just don't go in. So you want to go in with a good mindset. These different chefs, they're, some of them may not have all these types of storage or situations on their season. So things are going to be a little bit different for them as well. But and some chefs love the mystery of going to the farmer's market and just kind of like walking around and then having the food talk to them. Unfortunately, you only have a limited amount of time when you going to do your shop. So you should go into this thinking about time management. That is extremely important.
And then adding to that stress too with time management, poor Dawn. She's cooking, she's sauteing her veg, and Gabri from Mexico spills like a quart and a half of water in her saute and puts the fire out on the stove. I was like, oh no. And then poor Dawn's like wants to kill him, but knows it was an accident. Like there's nothing you could have done about that. But that's just that stress of cooking in tight spaces, right? And that's part of what makes good TV. So also once we got through the cooking and everybody's presenting their food and stuff, so they get to the judges table, and there's 8 of them, and there's got to be like, I don't know, 5 Michelin stars among the 8 guests that are cooking. How intimidating would that be to cook in front of that kind of a customer base?
Yeah, I mean, when you have that kind of level of chef that you're cooking for, at the end of the day, you're going to put your best foot forward. You're not doing it to be half stepping. You know why you're on the show. You know what you're doing. Especially at this level and this type of season, you have a lot of past winners. So everyone is coming in there like a runner-up or a winner, and so they're all extremely strong. But they all can fumble, But to know the chef that you're cooking for, or that you're seeing once you get into the room, what you've already done is done. So however you cook your food, however you're presenting it, everyone wants to show off. Everyone wants to show their technique. But at the end of the day, they just want good food. And so it is intimidating. But when you're confident in your abilities, you just let your food speak for itself. And hopefully you don't get eliminated the first round, because then you can get an idea based on the feedback of how you can make adjustments, through the next few rounds.
Right. And just to highlight the internationalness of this show, I love how Sarah, she's from Kentucky. She was on Top Chef Kentucky. She's a Southern girl through and through. Me and you were Southern. She presented pot liquor, which for us that grew up in the South or live in the South, Southeastern United States, we love that stuff. But they didn't get it. A lot of the international folks like, it was lovely, but it wasn't that pretty. and they kind of ripped her for that. Like, so she cooked what she knew, right? And I'm sure it was good, but they just didn't understand it. And how much, how much storytelling, I guess, can play into cooking a dish and helping them to understand what it is. And I think maybe if Sarah would have talked a little bit more about what it was, then maybe they would have understood it a little bit more before eating it. What did you think about that? Was she too hyper focused on locally cooking what she knew, which everybody should cook what they know to do what's best. But did she not think about, okay, I'm on an international show. I don't think there's anybody from America other than the judges at the table.
Yeah, it kind of brings up to what I was saying a little bit earlier. The challenge is the judges that you're cooking for, depending on their experience and their palate, where they're coming from. Like during my season, they didn't hit the South until later on. I think you mentioned that in season 16 when it was in Charleston. Then all of a sudden, it's like now they're the aficionados of Southern cooking, Tom, Padma, and Gail, when they never had been there before. Like at the end of the day, if they hadn't really been there, because they're so used to being in New York, their world travel, but they haven't really traveled through the South to have the understanding. Like Padma, she's done episodes with, BJ Dennis, so she's learning about the Gullah people and the cuisine. So her palate is now more educated about that, whereas years before it wasn't. And so that is a challenge. So for her to cook something that would stay true to her, and if there were some other Southern judge, like if Ed Lee was there and he was tasting it, he'd be like, oh, he'd have been all over it. But you bring somebody from California that was coming over, they're gonna enjoy it for what it is, but they're so used to cooking something different. And that's the hard part about the show. You got to do the transport and grow as a chef on the show. That's the biggest thing. You need to do what you do, but you also need to evolve as a chef. Those are ones that win. You can't just say, I'm going to force feed everything like this. You have to at some point adjust. And so I think she probably got feedback from that and is probably going to adjust really well moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, she's a great chef, a great Southern chef for sure. I just don't think the table was ready for pot liquor. They just weren't prepared. They weren't ready for it. So let's talk about, we don't have time to talk about all the dishes. So let's talk about the top three and the bottom three. So the top three, you had Tom from Germany, Chef Tom. I'm not going to say their last names because I'm just going to butcher them. So Tom, he had variations of carrot. He had a blistered carrot with carrot chutney, carrot ginger mousse, and bone marrow dust. I think out of the three, he really understood this assignment. I mean, he really understood what vegetable forward meat as a side player meant. So when you first heard he wanted to make a carrot puree and actually mold it into a carrot, what were you thinking?
A lot of these chefs have that interpretation in that style, to be able to take something, manipulate it, and then form it back into itself, so that texturally it's a little bit different. So I understood, I got it. I understood the direction he wanted to go in because, as a chef, it's a culinary arts, right? Everyone's an artist, and their interpretation of their art is their self-expression. So I didn't think anything was wrong with it. I thought that I said, well, it's ballsy. If he can pull it off, great. And I'm sure that for him to even come up with it, he had to have already done something similar in that idea. He didn't just say, oh, I was going to make this and turn it into, a carrot, make it look like a carrot from a carrot. Like you had that has to be a part of his repertoire.
Yeah, I kind of hoped he did pull it off, but he still was able to pivot and just made a canal out of it. And I thought, I would have loved to have seen that because that was a ballsy move to be able to puree it and then make it into a different form of itself. I thought would have been, especially on any other season, that would have been like a finale dish, right? But this is what he's putting out on day one. So I thought it looked really good, and I love carrots personally, so I thought that was one that I would really want to have tasted. And then Charbel from Top Chef Middle East, Northern Africa, he really celebrated the onion, and he roasted that onion, made a puree out of the onion, did a chicken jus and sumac tuile, and then he took the time to put the onion puree in between each layer of onion. So it's like if you didn't know you're eating onion, you do now. And I thought that was really good. And what was interesting is in the stew room, some of the ones that didn't make it into the top three were kind of like, oh, this wasn't our kitchen. And, this is, if we were in our kitchen, we could have pulled this off. And another one was real quick to step in and say, that's not an excuse. Look at Charbel. He was able to pull it out. So what did you think of the roasted onion dish?
I thought it was beautiful. I thought he understood the challenge. I think that, the simplicity of the dish, but the degree of difficulty was still very high. You know, to be able to commit to that level of a dish and the simplicity of it by honing in just on the technique was extremely important, you know, and he nailed it, you know, and you know, there's a lot of chefs that do really well with that. I mean, again, it's a part of your style and your repertoire. When you go into this thing, you got to know who you are. You got to stay true to who you are. You got to be able to pivot and adjust. And he understood his assignment. You know, he understood what he needed to do, and he was going to say, "Hey, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. I'm meeting the challenge, and hopefully they get it." You know, because if that onion wasn't cooked perfect, it wouldn't have translated.
Yep, lot of pressure on that onion. So then you have begonia from Spain, which the one dish that I think I wanted to try the most because it looked so neat. She made pumpkin noodles with duck cells and a raw milk cream. So looking at it on TV, those noodles moved like noodles. Those pumpkin noodles, it didn't look like, you know, a squash turned into a noodle. It looked like noodles, and I'm a texture guy, so I would have loved to have tried it and eaten that and see how it felt, you know, as I was chewing it. So what did you think when you saw that dish?
Again, you know, these chefs are coming in there. They're coming in playing hard. You know, they're going out for the gusto right from the gates. I mean, and they're all winners, so they're all coming off of highs from winning their last season, right? So, you know, or being a runner-up and still feeling like they got something to prove. So their adrenaline is already super high. They're already at a certain point. They're not used to all hearing, "Hey, it's time to pack your knives and go." They're used to hearing their name and they're winning. And so for her to already, you know, have, you know, very highly skilled restaurants and at a high level, and then she's already been working on this. A lot of these things are already, when you're working, what people don't realize also, when you're running these very high level restaurants, you know, you have a cost of goods that you have to deal with. So sometimes you have to go back and make adjustments for menus and have more vegetable forward dishes on the menus to be able to have a better even playing field in terms of your P mix in terms of your cost of goods. So they're gonna work on more vegetable forward dishes. So if you look at like a Dan Barber at Blue Hill, whatever, like he's gonna work on, okay, here's the perfect squash. I want to do this dish with squash, but I'm still gonna charge, you know, X amount of dollars for it.
Right.
Because it's squash. Yeah, he can put the technique in there and then operate at a very, you know, high level and have better cost. So like in my mind, she was doing the same thing. She's already done that technique before, and she already understood how it was going to play out. So it wasn't risky for her when she's used to already doing that same style in her restaurant. She may have done it with a different vegetable, but she's already done something very similar to that. You don't go in there all the time and just say, well, I'm just going to do something 100% different. You're going to learn. There's techniques that you've done to be able to, you can say, I want to showcase this because I know this is going to give me an edge.
Yeah, these three knew exactly what they were doing at the moment that the rules were announced for this elimination challenge. They already had it in their mind what they wanted to do and how they were going to get it done. And it showed with these top three. I think the top three were right. Tom, Charbel, and Begonia were the right top three. And then Charbel was the one that ended up winning for his onion dish. And rightfully so. I think they made the right decision on the top three. So let's look at the bottom three. So we have Chef Samuel from France. He made tiger prawn carpaccio, prawn head emulsion, vegetables, and a prawn cracker. Unlike the other three, this guy made prawns the star, and it wasn't supposed to be. And then he got dinged for not deveining his shrimp. So I paused it though, and I was talking to my wife about it. We were watching it, and I said, "Okay, I get deveining the shrimp. I get why you do it. It's gross. It's the digestive tract of the shrimp. You want to get rid of that. But when you go to a low country boil place, or you do peel and eat shrimp, those aren't deveined. So why is it okay for one and not okay for the other?" And I'm not a chef, so I'm asking out of genuine curiosity. Like, why is low country boiled shrimp okay not to devein, but, you know, fine dining tiger prawn carpaccio, which I guess now that I'm saying it out loud, it's carpaccio. You want that, it's going to be slimy. But is that the reason why? Because the carpaccio preparation versus boiling it to death?
I would have never, maybe a spot prawn. I would have done something that was raw. And a carpaccio, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that blue prawn that he had, I wouldn't have done that. It was too thick. It wasn't pounded thin enough. I would have done like a hot cold combination where I would have poured something hot on a table side where it kind of just cooked it, so it's gonna be palatable. But you're having a raw prawn on the plate.
Yeah.
Like you have that vein, so now you're gonna have that where it's raw. Versus a low country boil, yeah, you're eating shrimp and you're eating the whole thing because it's hot, it's steamy, it's spicy.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like sucking the heads from a crawfish. It's like what you're eating when you're sucking the heads. It's the same thing, essentially. In terms of like, hey, this is kind of gross. You're not gonna necessarily do that from a raw. You would do that cooked, all the way, because all that seasoning is there. I think that's the thing that really turned them off. I don't think anyone also would have actually thought about like, hey, let's go ahead and do this prawn. This I really want to eat a raw shrimp that's not pounded out really thin, and that's not really meant to be eaten raw like that. I mean, I think he got dinged. I think it's twice on that. I mean, that's kind of crazy.
I think that's this is the guy where the Quickfire is an hour and a half, so maybe the time got to him. Who knows? He kind of got into his head a little bit. The prawn cracker looked good though. I thought that was a pretty neat little design feature. And then Dawn Burrell, we talked about earlier how much she stresses me out, right? Watching her cook and shop. She was on the bottom three as well. She did a West Indian onion and squash patty with coconut broth, lobster, and mushroom salad. The judges said if it was a pastry challenge, would have been great. But the vegetable was invisible in the pastry. So when you were watching it, what were you thinking there when she was making this initially?
That she didn't really get the challenge, Like I think that when you're talking that if you look at a lot of the other chef testants, a lot of their stuff was very, very, very vegetable forward. I think that she didn't get the whole grasp the whole idea of it, and that and that's why. I mean, because sometimes these rules are is up to an interpretation. You should what you don't see is that everyone is asking questions on the side, like you're going through rules. Everyone goes through a room, it's videotaped. Everyone has a contract. They have to sign it. They have to read the contract, understand what the rules are. They have time to ask the questions. So before they go in to cook, it's not as much like what you think is like, oh, okay, you're going in to cook immediately in seconds. No, that's not the case. They are making sure that is, your time and everything is 100% even. They want to make sure it's a safe environment. They want to make sure everyone understands the rules. So that's why they do that break and make sure that everyone's clear on it. And if they have any questions, they can ask those questions. And then they go right back into the moment. But I don't think that she really grasped the rules and understood what the challenge was when they asked those questions. And I think that was her challenge. And she goes back to think about like, oh, I could have done, I could have taken some carrots and done it 4 different ways. I could have confit some in a duck fat. I could have charred some on a grill and done some ash. I could have, fried some crispy, and then I could have used some kind of bacon fat to do as a dressing on this whole thing, but it was mainly carrots. I mean, and she would have done really well. I mean, but that didn't happen.
Yeah. And then the last one in the bottom three was Chef Gabri from Mexico. He did a mexlapique. I had to Google that. Apparently it's an Aztec word referring to wrapping food to cook on a grill. So when he was saying it's like a tamal, that it's exactly like that. So that kind of helped me understand it. But what he presented was charcoal veg, confit corn, black truffle beans, pickled mushrooms, and a red rainbow chard. It just looked like a plate of burnt vegetables. I'm going to be honest. I looked at that. I was like, that does not look. And you can see when the judges were eating it, they were like breaking things apart and kind of looking at it sideways. And like, I don't know what he's trying to convey here. And then they asked him, well, where's the meat? And then he kind of made a big deal out. Oh my God, I forgot the chicken emulsion in the ISI charger. I should have had that. But then he remembered, oh wait, I cooked the beans in pork fat. Now, in past seasons, you keep your cool, right? And you're like, oh, the meat's in the pork the pork. I use pork in the beans to stew the beans. But he kind of made it. He brought attention to himself by saying, oh my God, I forgot the chicken. So when you're a competitor, you've been on there. Would you have kind of played that off, knowing you forgot the chicken emulsion? Would you be like, oh wait, I do remember the pork fat. Oh yeah, the meat is in the pork fat that I cooked the beans in.
No, well, they, let me just say this. When you're competing, right, there's producers around that are shadowing all the chefs and watching everything they prep, and they're
Uh-huh.
taking notes, right? And then there's a time that they actually could come back and actually, ask a question about something that might have been missing. Because also there's a time that during that challenge, and maybe they just didn't show it because they don't always show it. At some point, Tom and somebody else will walk through the kitchens and introduce a chef to somebody. They don't always show when they do that, but like
Right.
during my season, Tom had walked into the kitchen and had interviewed me, and but they didn't show it during the show because he had asked me, he's like, man, you guys killed it, and da da da. Like, what happens if you go home? I said, well, chef, my shoulders are big enough. If I got to go home as an exec chef during restaurant wars, then I'll go home. But it's not
Yeah.
because we didn't execute everything the way we wanted to. So if he was in the kitchen and then he saw that, he asked the chef, oh, what are you doing with this ISI? Oh, I'm making this potato puree. Then Tom could have asked that question if he didn't actually make mention of it. That didn't happen because he was honest enough and basically said, oh man, I forgot this item. If
Yeah.
he didn't do that, Tom or whoever the chef that walked the kitchen may have said, well, I thought you actually had some kind of puree that you had in the ISI. Somehow it would have come out, because at some point, Tom is going to walk through the kitchen and say hello to the chefs and introduce some of the other guest judges. It's always going to happen.
That's interesting. So when Gail asked him, where's the meat in your dish? It's very possible a producer could have fed her the information. Hey, he forgot something. Ask him about it.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
That's interesting. Because I'm sitting there watching TV. I said, just play it off. Like I meant to do that, right? But I guess that's the drama that you build in the show, right? We don't see all that stuff that comes in the background. So, all right. So they name their top three, they name their bottom three, and then everybody goes in the stew room. So I know you're probably watching this and you're like, the hell with that stew room, man? Like your stew room in season 7 looked like an extension closet from the dry goods section of the walk-in.
Literally.
And this stew room this stew room has champagne, has comfy couches and chairs, and you're like, come on, man. We're sitting on metal chairs for however long. How long are you in that stew room while the judges are deliberating?
Like
on average,
3 to 4 hours.
Oh my God. What do you guys do to kill the time?
You drink. Yeah, you drink. You drink, or you take a nap, or if you think about the years past, a lot of times they would show all the antics of what the chefs were doing in the stew room, because you're literally just in there stewing. Yeah. But see, some of the other seasons, they stopped doing the stew room like that. They basically just lined you all up and then let you listen to everyone else's critique. They've done that for some seasons. I think they've just stopped that. But I used to love that because you would get done cooking, then it's like everyone's lined up, and then you hear the good and the bad all at the same time, which gives you great advantages for your next couple of challenges, because you're hearing the feedback from on everyone's food. Whereas a lot of times you don't necessarily hear everything, so you're not able to size everyone up other than what you saw or you hear them talking about. But this stew room certainly was a lot more plush than others have been. But as again, like it's year 20. I mean, it's 20. It's like they should be. They're very excited about this opportunity. You guys, chefs come from all over the world. It should be better. It should, they should be raising the ante.
Yeah, but I'm sure you're thinking like, man, I wish we would have had those comfy couches when we were sitting in the stew room for 4 hours.
Yeah, well, they want to make you. It's kind of like going to McDonald's. They don't want you to stay there and sit on those hard benches. That's why they're hard. They want you to get up and go. They make more money through the drive-through. And it's kind of the same thing with the stew. It's like they don't want you to be comfortable. They want to keep you up like kind of pent up with all this frustration. And then when you get on camera, you're able to express it, because a lot of times you're not allowed to talk in there either. Sometimes you're not allowed to talk. Sometimes a hard TV timeout. If you're not being recorded, then it's a hard TV timeout. They want you to kind of chill out and not say too much. And then when the cameras are on, then it's like you can talk about whatever you want pertaining to the challenge.
Interesting. So the winner of the elimination challenge was Charbel with his onion dish, and then the person that was eliminated was Chef Samuel from France, and he's moving to Last Chance Kitchen. We'll talk about Last Chance Kitchen on the next go around, but just kind of giving your overall thoughts. If you had Last Chance Kitchen in your season, how different would the outcome have been?
I think the outcome would have been a lot different. I would have been, I was pissed off for my elimination. I was, I had some ups and downs, but was pretty strong, consistent on my season. And some of these things in terms of like the identifiable dishes where the judges, not necessarily grasping or understanding certain things because their flavor profiles are not used to. I would have gone and I would have made the adjustments for sure. Yeah. And I don't think I think I would have gotten out of it, and I think I would have gone all the way. But it is what it is.
Right. So based on this first episode, who would you say are your two front runners? Just looking at who cooked and everything. If you had to pick one or two, who's a front runner for you in your mind?
I would say the 2-star Michelin chef from Spain. Mm-hmm. I think she's very strong. I think she'll be pretty consistent. I think last season's winner. I think he's going to be a beast. I think he's going to be a reckoned to be forced. I think he's probably a little nervous the first round, but he still understands what the assignment is. I think he'll be good. Those are the two. The third one. The chef that just won that challenge. I think I think his technique and the simplicity, and he's young, and he's like 25.
Yeah, 25. That shocked me. I was like, man, you're a child getting on this show. Good for you.
Yeah. So like, I think him showing that level of restraint already as young as he is. I think it's gonna be good. He's probably been working in kitchens since he was like 14. So as a lot of these chefs, when they start, I remember doing working at Col Arroyo in Palma Mallorca, a 2-star Michelin restaurant. I went there to stage for a day. There were these kids in there that were 14, 15 years old working, all tatted up, piercings everywhere. They're coming in and breaking down, whole, pigs and lamb and butchering fish, and just super skilled. And they were like 15, 16 years old. So imagine working in a kitchen like that and you're 25, you're already at a super high level, right? Especially as a sous chef. As a sous chef, you're the mercenary. You're in there just grinding. So you're more nervous about a sous chef coming in than you are a chef. Because sometimes the chefs aren't necessarily cooking all the time. They might be the creative mind, but like I was a different kind of breed. I was always cooking. But some chefs, they're not used. You'll hear them say, "Oh man, I haven't done this in a while," or "My sous chef, I wish my sous chef was here." The sous chefs, they come in there. That's why they have a mix of the sous chefs intertwined, because they're the ones that's really grinding it out the majority of the time.
Yeah. I even think on your episode in the Mies Challenge, I think it was your season. Somebody said, "I got people for this." Like I haven't brunoise an onion in years. What are we talking about here?
Exactly. I think that was Tim.
Yeah. So for me, I think my top two, I'm going to go with Tom and Begonia. I think Tom, if he keeps cooking like he did with that carrot, I think he's going to go a long way. And he was just confident. He was cooking with confidence. And Begonia, if she keeps doing creative stuff like the pumpkin noodle thing throughout the rest of the challenge, she's going to be tough to beat. But yes, my personal favorite, I like Budalo, the one that won last season. I think he was putting out beautiful food last season. And I don't know how much of a time difference is between his season ending and this season starting, but he's probably still in that frame of mind. So I think he's going to do real well. Well, good. I think we did it. I think we broke it down successfully, like carving a fine chicken, if you will. So thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully, like I said, we'll be doing this semi-instantaneously. We'll see how it goes. And if you eat your content on socials by following me on Instagram at Rich Herrera on both Instagram and Facebook. Chef, where can they find you on the socials to keep up with what's going on with you and Silky's and the cookbook and Oprah?
Yeah, Chef Kenny Gilbert on Instagram, and then Silky's Chicken and Champagne Bar on Instagram.
Awesome.
And Facebook. Both.
Awesome. Great. So everybody hit the like and subscribe button so that way you'll know when new episodes are dropping. I'll continue to do these as quickly as I can every week, so that way we can keep up with the season as it progresses. So Chef Kenny, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.